To Autumn by John Keats. Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run. To bend with apples the mossed cottage trees, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core, to swell the good and plump the hazel shells, with a sweet kernel to set budding more, and still more later flowers for the bees, until they think warm days will never cease, for summer has overbrimmed their clammy cells. Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoever seeks abroad may find thee sitting careless on a granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind, or in a half-reaped furrow sound asleep, drowsed with the fume of poppies, while thy hook spares the nest swathed in all its twined flowers, and sometimes like a gleaner thou dost keep, steady thy laden head across a brook, or by a cider press with patient look, thou watchest the last oozings, hours by hours. Where are the songs of spring? Ay, where are they? Think not of them, thou hast thy music too, while barred clouds bloom the soft dying day, and touch the stubble plains with a rosy hue. Then in a waveful choir the small gnats mourn, among the river sallows borne aloft or sinking as the light wind lives or dies, and full-grown lambs loud bleat from hilly bourne. Hedge crickets sing, and now with treble soft the redbreast whistles from a garden croft, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies. Now this is a very, very complicated poem, so first I'm going to start by saying do read the bit on the other side of the page where it says about John Keats and a bit of background information. And there are lots of little exercises you could do on the poem. A teacher once told me that someone just went into the exam not knowing anything, which is not recommended, and just practically, by some miracle, managed to answer the question by purely answering these points. But don't do that. I'm just saying it's a good idea to look at them. So the poem is addressed to Autumn. Autumn can be considered as the actual season or a person, and the first stanza, first paragraph I think, is about the actual season, autumn, as it says, about hazel shells and bees and flowers and that sort of thing. Late flowers, so obviously it's not going to be the spring flowers, it's going to be the flowers that come out in autumn. The second stanza is all about a person, and my guess is that this person is Autumn. And this suggests that maybe he's talking to someone he loves, as it suggests here. He fell in love, well actually it's not in here, but he fell in love with a woman called Fanny Braun, and maybe he's addressing her. You never know. So the second stanza is about a person, and the last stanza is sort of everything's been harvested and it's the end of autumn, and so it has a lot of things to do with the end of autumn, such as full-grown lambs, as in sheep. So the first stanza, it suggests a bright and pleasant setting. It suggests that the environment is ready for harvest. It also suggests pregnancy, which could just be sort of could be a metaphor for the person Autumn in the second stanza, that maybe she is pregnant. Never know. And this is suggested by all the rounded words. For example, mellow, ripeness, plump, swell, budding, anything like that. Everything suggests sort of the beginning of autumn, that everything is ready to be harvested and everything is very beautiful and nice. For example, the first line, season of mists and mellow fruitfulness. It also has a lot of sibilants, which is the STS, and it begins with season, so it begins with the sibilants, which is a nice thing to note. Examiners are always happy with big words. The happy with jambement in it, which is when the lines run on. For example, and plump the hazel shells with a sweet kernel, which goes from one line to another. It suggests that it's what's mimetic of the nature overflowing. There's just so much going on, so much natural beauty going on, and there's just so much of it. That's what Keats is trying to get at. It says for summer has overbrimmed. We would assume it's sort of September time, October possibly, but September is a good time for this poem, and it sort of goes chronologically. One thing to note is that Keats was very prevalent during the period of 1790 to 1820, and he was thought of as one of the romantic poets of the time. And one of the features of romantic poetry is nature. So the second stanza begins with "Who hath not seen thee amid of thy store?" So Keats is addressing this person, Autumn, and as I said, the poem is chronological, and so this represents sort of the October time, and this is the actual harvesting. So in the first stanza, he's talking about what is to be harvested. He's talking about all the nature being overbrimmed, and everything is at its full capacity. And in the second stanza, he's talking about this person who has obviously been harvesting thy store and half reaped, along with cider press. So maybe this person works at a cider press for apples. This stanza has a lot of sensuous language. Now, don't confuse sensual with sensuous. Sensuous means to do with the senses, sight, hearing. And so a sensuous poem includes all those sorts of things. Sensual is with euphemisms and sexual language. So do make sure you're writing the right word. The language I'm referring to here is, for example, touch would be thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind, because the winnowing wind is obviously going through her hair and she would feel that. And sitting carelessly on the granary floor, you would imagine some sort of stone. It's like you would imagine cold on your skin. And then drowsed with the fume of poppies, obviously the smell of poppies, but when you think of poppies you think of red, so that indirectly makes the reader think red. Lastly, when he says thou watches the last oozings hour by hour, hours by hours, so that refers to sight, and the last oozings is onomatopoeic because oozings could refer to the cider press or the oozings of the sun as it sets. That's the one. One thing to note about this poem is that it is an ode. An ode is sort of a celebration, and here Keats is celebrating autumn. An interesting little fact to know is that this was one of Keats's last poems, and this was the last autumn he experienced. In the third stanza, it's gone on to the November month, and this is when all the harvest has been done, and it's slowly getting colder, and the first thing he says is, "Where are the songs of spring?" So he's saying that everything is sort of going down, the celebration is sort of withering away, and as autumn is dying, so is Keats, as he had tuberculosis, and by this time he would have been very much into his, very much in bad condition. So in the last stanza he has a lot of reference to the music elements, to hearing things, and for example the wailful choir and the sinking as the light wind lives or dies, so that could reference the just the sound of the wind as it goes through the air. The bleating of the lambs and of the full-grown lambs, so the sheep, as I said. This reference to full-grown lambs sort of, it says that he's remembering the time when the sheep were lambs, and by saying full-grown lambs, he sort of touches upon this element of youth. It has this sort of nostalgic feeling towards the past, towards the younger time of the year and the younger time of Keats. And the message is sort of the circle of life. Everything dies, and he could be referencing himself just to reassure himself that despite the fact that he was dying, that it's not the end, it's just the circle of life. So it's a very beautiful poem because of all the, it's got a lot of rich vocabulary and a lexis throughout of nature. But to make it to pinpoint it more in the exam, reference things such as the sensuous language or the reference to music and the reference to pregnancy in the first stanza. So please, if you notice anything else about this poem that is interesting and that you would like to share, please comment. And that was To Autumn.